Good afternoon. How are you? My name's Neil Switey. I'm with the Boston Globe Sunday Magazine, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here for this panel today. We're going to deal today with a particularly knotty piece of this puzzle. And I know there are, as we heard just in the last panel, there are lots of knotty pieces of the puzzle. Just as a brief introduction, I come to this not as an expert, but thankfully we've got three great experts here who are going to bring different insights into this issue. But I have two experiences. One as a reporter who covers education and debt issues for the Globe magazine. Most recently did a deep dive specifically about low-income first-generation students and how the system right now and the landscape, the debt landscape, particularly affects them, the students that have the least margin of error. And the second piece is I'm involved in a nonprofit here in Boston called the Al Ray Scholars Program that works with students who started college and dropped out, and works with them to re-engage them and get them to graduation. And I think most of us in the room here probably realize it's often not talked about, but the sad reality is that if you're a low-income student and you're not going to have the financial wherewithal to finish college, and a depressing number of students, as we know, are not finishing college, you're better off never having started at all. The number of students that we see who get on that path with packages that aren't sustainable from the outset, and then find themselves without the income boost that you would get from that degree, using a big percentage of their meager earnings to pay down loans to colleges and servicers without having that degree. It's really kind of a sad situation. So I'm excited to hear from the panel today and to engage questions from you about how we deal with that particular issue of those students that maybe have the least margin of error. So the panel today, just quickly for the introductions, Fong Long is the Director of Financial Services at the Compass Working Capital, a nonprofit that provides individual financial coaching and asset building programs to low-income clients. Persis Yu is a staff attorney with the National Consumer Law Center, a nonprofit specializing in consumer issues on behalf of low-income people. And Toby Merrill is a lawyer at the Legal Services Center of the Harvard Law School, where she directs the Project on Predatory Student Lending. So we're going to hear from each of them and then start the discussion. So we'll start with Fong.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me okay? Great, thank you. Is it on? I just heard someone say no. Oh, no, really? Okay. Is this better? Yes. Thank you. Here we go. I'm really excited to be here today with Neil, Toby, and Persis, so thank you so much, ASA, for inviting us. My name is Fong, and I'm the Director of Financial Services at Compass Working Capital. I manage recruiting, hiring, and training of our financial coaches, and I develop our financial content and curriculum for clients. So I want to share a little bit about what we do. We've been around since 2005, and our clients are 90% women, mostly single parents with school-aged children. The majority receive public housing assistance, such as Housing Choice or Section 8 vouchers. We currently serve about 1,000 clients. And the bulk of our programs are running the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, a government program funded by HUD. A little bit about how FSS works. FSS participants have an escrow account created for them by their housing agency, typically a housing authority. Every time participant's rent increases due to earned income, that difference is saved in the escrow account. So participants may pay their increased rent and build savings in the process. So the average balance in an escrow account in our program is about $8,500. So it's a significant asset. And also we just launched a national network that will allow us to share our trainings for financial coaches with partners throughout the country who want to incorporate FSS into their housing agency or in their nonprofit. And so our coaching approach is client-driven, meaning that we are not dictating what the client should be working toward or how they do it. We're here to help them reach their financial goals. and to help clear the barriers that they may face along the way. The most common goals our clients have are homeownership, saving for college for themselves or their children, and retirement. And the photo here is of Tanya. She's a recent graduate of our program with Lynn Housing Authority. And Tanya graduated from the FSS program and fulfilled her dream of buying a home in Lynn. So we're really proud of her. So we help our clients reach their goals by providing unbiased and accurate information in these 5 core areas. On this list, I'll read it: employment and income, credit and debt, savings, utilization of high-quality financial services, and asset development. And we also connect clients to trusted referral partners. Our financial coaches are full-time paid staff, and they're trained on financial content and also trained on how to be a coach. So we helping our clients fix or improve their credit is actually a big part of what we do. And at every appointment, we actually pull the client's credit report and review it with them. A good credit score and history is important to our clients because often their ability to borrow is their largest and most valuable financial asset. So when they're applying for a mortgage, small business loan, or pursuing a career that requires advanced training, they're going to need loans to pay for that. And so because of that, student loans is another big part of what we do and what we help our clients with. Student loans can have a big impact on a person's financial picture, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively. So different effects that can have are not having enough income coming in every month because wages are being garnished, for example, or not being able to complete your education because of a past student loan default, or not being able to purchase a home, or not being able to qualify for a mortgage due to active or derogatory student debt. And so this chart here shows that over half of our clients in the last 5 years with student loans are those that have less than a 2-year degree. So those non-completers that we've talked about before in other panels. And the average student loan debt for clients that have less than a 2-year degree is $14,000. And for those that have 2-year degree or higher, it's about $38,000. So in the packets that you're provided when you arrived, or I think they're online or using the app, we recently published a brief that summarizes how we assist clients with student debt issues. So in 2014, my colleagues and I at Compass worked with Toby Merrill with the Project on Predatory Student Lending to build a training for our coaching staff on how to deal with common student loan issues. And once we started working with clients and doing the data gathering that we needed to do, that opened the door to be able to help clients uncover more complex issues. And we document everything that we learn along the way that we use to train our new staff. You can have that brief and take a look at it, and I'm happy to answer questions later if you have any. And that's all. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Toby?
So I work at the Legal Services Center of Harvard Law School. It's a legal aid office in Jamaica Plain. It's made up of 5 clinics. So we have family law, housing, tax, a veterans clinic that also includes disability benefits, and a consumer protection and predatory lending clinic, which I'm part of. So we teach law students and we provide direct services. The Project on Predatory Student Lending, which I direct, was founded in 2012. We provide legal services to low-income borrowers who have been harmed and taken advantage of by for-profit schools. So, when we think about populations negatively impacted by student debt, I think people who attended for-profit schools should be among the foremost in our mind. For-profit colleges produce more dropouts than graduates, as Neil said. So I think that's a really powerful indicator. As Neil said, dropouts are much more likely to default than people who complete their degrees. So those are just the effects. I mean, there are also really pernicious targeting and abusive recruitment practices that we deal with. That's the background. So who are we serving and how are we serving them? The project is made up of 8 attorneys and several non-attorneys, such as paralegals. We serve people in a variety of ways. So everything from basic advice to individual representation. So, if people are being sued by debt collectors, if people need help filing for any sort of discharge with their student loan, if people need help filing a defense to repayment of their student loan, those are the sorts of things we would help individuals with. We also represent people in affirmative litigation. so both in court and in arbitration. And in addition, we are involved in more systemic or impact litigation. So in September, we sued the Department of Education and the Department of Treasury over the federal government's seizure of our clients' tax refunds to pay off student loans from Everest, even though the government has acknowledged that these loans are unenforceable and incurred by massive corporate fraud. So despite that, the Departments of Education and Treasury are currently collecting from nearly 80,000 former Corinthian students who attended during the period that Corinthian was in operation before it shut down. So those are like some of the services that we provide to people. And in addition to those types of things, we also do some policy work, again, on behalf of our clients, low-income borrowers who attended for-profit colleges. So a member of our team represented borrowers at the most recent negotiated rulemaking. Actually, members of our team have represented low-income borrowers as the legal aid representative at the last 4 negotiated rulemakings at the Department of Education. It's someone else's turn now.
Hey, don't look at her.
So I guess the last big question that I wanted to address just at the outset is, how do we find people? How do people find us? How do we reach people? And we genuinely have no trouble filling, or some might say overfilling, our dockets, and we generally don't advertise at all. So we see lots of cases that we can't take, and that if you are not in that position, it's extremely unpleasant. So some of the ways that people reach out to us, we have a hotline, we accept walk-ins, we love to get referrals from partner organizations. So I've been working with Compass for as long as the project has been in existence. It's been a really great source of clients. They do really good issue spotting, helping people get ready to get legal help. We also take referrals from basically every other legal aid organization. Most legal aid offices in this state and actually in the country don't have this sort of practice. We take internal referrals from the other practices in our building. Lots of clients who have housing problems, who have all sorts of other legal problems, have student debt problems. And we take referrals from government agencies because they can't represent individuals. So if people bring complaints to the Attorney General or somewhere else that can't represent people who need representation, occasionally they'll refer them to legal aid and to us. So all of that said, sometimes we do reach people or want to reach specific groups of people. And one of the ways that we have done that is we work with a couple of different groups that are organizing student debtors and really have a broader reach than we do and have a lot of contact with borrowers. So that's one way that we've been able to find people who we're looking for, like serve people with a particular type of problem. And I guess overall, like my conclusion is people seek us out, people work with us because we have the kind of help that they're looking for. And one of the ways that we have that kind of help, or like one of the types of help that is understanding that there are real reasons that things haven't worked out for them. I think this is something you said, actually, Persis. And so understanding those reasons and taking those reasons forward on their behalf, that's what we're doing, and I think that's why people come to us.
Great, thanks, Toby. Persis?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Persis Hugh. I direct the Student Loan Borrower Assistance Project at the National Consumer Law Center. We advocate on behalf of low-income borrowers federally and on some state issues. We tend to focus mostly on what we call the back-end issues, and I know that a lot of the focus has been on the front end of how people get loans, but we focus on the back end. So taking the assumption, working from the place of people have this debt and what are they going to do with it, and that's kind of where we fit in. We're a consumer advocacy organization. We also publish a legal treatise on student loan law. We run a listserv of student loan practitioners, of mostly legal services attorneys, also some private attorneys and some other advocates here and there. And we do trainings nationally, both in person and through the web, on how to serve low-income borrowers. And part of the philosophy of the Student Loan Borrower Assistance Project is that good public policy comes from the ground up. So in order to kind of fulfill that mandate, I do some limited direct representation as well. And like Toby said, I have absolutely no trouble filling my caseload. There is a wait list for folks to get services with us. The way that we work is we have a partnership with, they just changed their name, so I'm sorry for stumbling on it, the Economic Mobility Pathways. They used to be called Crittenton Women's Union, which helps folks transition out of poverty, essentially. I apologize to them in advance because I cannot articulate the whole scope of wonderful things that they do. But most relevant for like what I work with them on is they run a homeless shelter and a workforce development program. And the majority of the clients that come to me come because they wanted to go back to school and they were denied Title IV funds, and so they can't go back to school. About 2/3 of the folks that I work with are people of color. But roughly the same percentage went to a for-profit school. And they're facing the full spectrum of the, if you've ever heard me speak before, I'm sure you're tired of hearing me say this phrase, but they face the full spectrum of draconian consequences that come from student loan debt. The clients, if they're working, are facing wage garnishments. And let me just back up a little bit and to say that almost all the clients that I work with are also in default. There are the occasional clients that get to me before in the period of between delinquency and default, but the vast majority of clients that I work with are in default. And they're having, like Toby mentioned, their tax refunds taken. They almost all universally, if they are working, qualify for the Earned Income Tax Credit. And, you know, these consequences create such a catch-22 for our clients. If they're working, it means that all of their wages aren't able to go to, you know, putting food on the table. Especially because a lot of the clients I work with are homeless, the fact that the Earned Income Tax Credit is taken is especially heartbreaking because a lot of them were counting on that money in order to put a down payment on, or first and last month's rent, and to transition into permanent housing. You know, as I've mentioned, they can't access Title IV funds, which means that they can't go back to school and complete that degree that they, for the most part, did not finish. And they're getting harassed by debt collectors. And as we know that this debt follows our clients forever, potentially. There's no statute of limitations. The oldest client I've had was in his mid-80s. And, you know, and it was both his own debt from when he was in school and a PLUS loan that he took out for his son. And he had his Social Security garnished. And so the clients that we see do experience the very wide range of draconian consequences. And so the majority of services that I provide, we do, you know, we do the spectrum of services for folks in default. We do death and disability discharges, you know, if they didn't have their high school diploma or GED, you know, the false certifications. But the vast majority of clients that I work with are working to get out of default. That's probably the primary thing, is that they're working towards getting out of default and into one of the income-driven repayment plans. And so, you know, how my clients are experiencing them before they reach us is if they have a Department of Education help loan, you know, they're getting contacted by the debt collectors. And if they reach them, they're getting pushed to rehabilitation, which I have to tell you, none of my clients understand. And, you know, we just saw in the CFPB report that came out last week, the Student Loan Ombudsman report, that that nearly 70% of borrowers that work with the private collection agencies from the Department of Education do rehab their loans, and 1/3 to 1/2 of them redefault. And that is absolutely devastating. It's a devastating number. You know, we know that some of it, there have been well-documented problems with income-driven repayment and recertification of income-driven repayment, which I think accounts for some of that number. But I think the other part of the problem is that for a lot of the borrowers that I work with, rehab isn't the right answer. And the Department of Education's contract definitely promotes a one-size-fits-all for getting folks out of default. And that doesn't work for a lot of the borrowers that we work with. Now, the first thing I'll say when I counsel a borrower is this the right time for you to get out of default? Because let's be honest, getting out of default and redefaulting is way worse than not getting out of default, right? Because you have one chance to rehabilitate your loan, and if you consolidate, you have one chance to, so basically you get two chances, and then you're done. And then your earned income tax credit will be taken for the rest of your life or until the loan is paid off, whichever happens first. Wages will be garnished indefinitely, and once you get old enough, your Social Security will be. So to redefault is absolutely, in my mind, the worst possible outcome of what can happen. And so, I guess the question is what works, and I know I don't know, is the really easy answer to that. But I think we really don't know what works to get people out of default and to keep them out of default. The Treasury Department started a pilot program. It was kind of small, and I hope that they are able to do it and have it for longer. In their pilot program where they used Treasury Department employees who were not paid on commission, they also found that more borrowers, in our practice, we consolidate more borrowers than we rehabilitate. And Treasury similarly found that they were consolidating more borrowers than they were rehabilitating. And unfortunately, their pilot is 2 years long, which I don't think is long enough to really see the impact of this redefault, right? Because it took them a little time to get up to speed, and then rehabilitation is a year-long program. So we really don't have the breadth to see what is really going to help people stay out of default. And I think that is really the critical piece in terms of, thinking about how we get people out of default and into income-driven repayment. But I'd also, because I have this platform and I get on my soapbox, think that we also just need to think about the punitive nature of how we treat defaulters. We've talked already about the fact that a lot of these borrowers are non-completers. Disproportionately, they went to predatory for-profit schools. Disproportionately, they're students of color. In many ways, the education, it didn't work out for them, right? And in some ways, the deck is stacked. So is it really fair that, if you do everything right and you manage to get into income-driven repayment plan, you make $30,000, you have 3 children, your payments are $0 a month, and after 25 years, it'll be forgiven. If you screw up, if you don't travel down the path perfectly, you're going to get a couple $100 in wage garnishments every month. You're going to have potentially $4,000 of your earned income tax credit seized every year. That's the disparity between a $30,000 borrower with 3 kids who's in default versus someone who's in good standing. And in some ways, I think that's just punitive. And so I think that there's a lot of room to rethink how we treat these borrowers too, because it is incredibly discouraging and it really does hold them back. So that's my
Great.
piece.
All right, we tackled a lot of important issues there, and maybe let's try to tease out a few of them.